And we're live.
All right, welcome everybody to executive committee meeting on Monday, May 6th. And Eric, would you start us with the level call, please?
I would be happy to. Mr. Fisher.
Here.
Ms. Primer.
Yep.
Ms. Mail.
Here.
Ms. Wilson. Here. Ms. LaFollette.
Here.
Yes. Good job. Thank you. I try.
All right, so first order, we want to go ahead and set the agenda and adopt it. I do believe we had an update after I sent out the agenda to include a couple more legislative memos from our solicitor. So I'd like to add those. We are missing. Did anybody else have any other updates on the agenda?
I do not.
Anyone else?
Just for the minutes, the legislative amendments you're talking about are replacing pages to the codified ordinances and the ordinance regarding flags.
And there is a memo around the 7 mil. I'm Rob's email.
Right. Was the,
Are you passing it out, Rob?
no, I actually just gave it to you. That's the resolution regarding the contract for lease purchase of a police vehicle. That should have been the other thing that was added rather late.
Okay, so we're adding a couple things. And you're asking us to vote on this, to send it to full council?
No, full council will vote on it, just for
Okay, so
your.
we don't need to do anything with this today.
No, ma'am, unless you want to just, again, review it.
It was approved last.
Yes, I believe it was,
Vehicle purchase.
I believe finance has already looked at it.
So this
Okay.
is as a memo just to see, not to discuss. That's what I'm understanding.
It's, I mean, it's up to the
Okay, all right, so just
It's up
for
to
the
the
minutes,
committee.
that's all.
It's up to the committee.
Yeah, I don't think that we need to do anything with that. The other ones that we have here. I'm finding your email. You had a memo to executive about the flag policy, the 7 mil renewal, and an ordinance approving the current pages to the ORC. Those are the additions. Oh, and fourth one, ordinance amending appropriations, which that should be finance, not us. Correct?
Correct.
Okay. So I believe we are reviewing the ORC additional pages. The 7 mils, I don't believe that's actually us. David, would you agree that's finance?
Yeah.
Great.
I didn't have that on for reference. Was that on the packet online?
No, Rob emailed it afterwards.
I did.
Oh, okay, fine. Yeah, no, that makes sense. So
I
I'll
did.
take that off and put that into finance.
It's all
So
together, so we'll just.
Oh, got it.
it's all in one packet. So all we are talking about is the flag ordinance, which is on there. If you want to add a resolution number, it's 2024-5. And then we are also going to be talking about ordinance number 2024-2. That's the new addition to the agenda.
2024-2, that's ordinance 2024-2, and the other one is resolution?
Correct.
Yeah, I have those.
Okay, perfect. All right. Anything else?
Thank you for that clarification.
Yes, I appreciate it. Great. I'll make a motion to adopt the revised agenda, adding resolution 2024-5 and ordinance 2024-2. Can I get a second?
Yeah, I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
David? Oh, good, okay, great. It passes. I can't hear you when you're next to me. All right, and then we need to look at the minutes from April 1st and approve our April Fool's minutes, please. Anybody have any updates, corrections to the minutes? A motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Great. do not believe we have anybody here to speak either. I speak that one. So we'll just hop in. So if you all were in the last council meeting or you watched online, there was a memo to add new ordinance around a new resolution around our flag ordinance, and that got bumped over to executive committee to review. So it's not in the packet online, but if you look in the materials that were emailed out, you will find that language. And there were a couple issues that came up specifically around the implementation of this ordinance that this committee is asked to figure out.
And can I clarify that currently there's no ordinance or no outline of how this type of thing can be handled currently?
Yes. Not in Gulf Manor.
Not yet.
Other villages and cities have them, yes.
Sure.
And I think it's still new.
And the state has anything?
I don't know. I can ask.
Does the state have any?
The
laws?
state does not. The state would not. They would have their own. They might, in the state of Ohio, they might have their own, but there's nothing that covers the state.
The state doesn't have anything about hanging.
It's strictly a local issue.
No, I just meant at their own buildings.
That's what I'm saying. They may, but really doesn't have any effect on us.
Yes, it just is a model.
Yeah, I would like to see if they have one in the model. So what cities stand out to you that's already implemented?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I've
Okay.
reviewed a lot of them. I can't recall
Okay.
any one in particular.
But like the big cities, like we're talking New York and LA, or
Oh.
we're talking like
Cities and
Auburn,
states.
Alabama?
All I review is Ohio.
Okay,
And like I said, what's interesting, and I expressed this to council, is that despite the fact that we're solid, this is a very good
right,
resolution. There are, because it is somewhat of a risky and a
that's my
controversial
concern,
matter, there are communities running away from it and are just saying, look, the only flags we're going to fly are state of Ohio, U.S. flag, and our city or village flag.
right. Yeah, that's why I was kind of curious to know what the climate is of the
Yeah.
cities that passed it.
Yeah, I think it's across the board. I think
Okay.
there are a fair number that are taking this position and doing this.
Okay.
And then again, a fair number are just saying, we're not going to take the risk.
Right.
So, does anybody recall from the conversation at last council meeting, the issues that were brought up? I remember like a person carrying a flag at the parade.
Oh, yeah.
The one that I did correct,
Mhm.
or I added, is initially this had been written based on the two flag poles that are on the front of the building. I modified that to just any flag on any municipal or village-owned or properties to cover the parks, that kind of thing.
Gotcha. Has everybody had a chance to read the resolution? Yeah. Are there any additional edits or concerns that we have for this?
I guess the other thing that you brought up, I mean, again, I wanted to leave this to the executive committee to consider the idea of carrying flags on floats at for our parades. And I still think that that's a valid issue that we should probably address in this. I know there was some disagreement with that, but I think if we have someone who's carrying a flag, again, it's not covered by the ordinance, it's going to open the door, as we're trying not to do, to entities that we don't particularly want to be able to fly flags in the village.
Well, I guess my question is, how could we actually, you can't, with freedom of speech, I can't limit somebody from carrying an offensive flag.
That's not what I'm talking about.
What are you talking about?
I'm talking about if we have someone, let's say we have a float and a flag, or a float in a parade, and they carry a flag, and it's not, they don't petition the village to do it, or I'm sorry, council doesn't, the way it works, council says we want this flag to be flown, then all of a sudden, I'm afraid we're gonna open the door for, again, making a public forum and then anybody can fly a flag. And once you open the door, it's not gonna end at a parade. It's gonna become flying a flag on village property. Because that's what the case laws have established, is that once you allow anyone, once you open a door for anyone to fly a flag, petition the village or city or whatever to fly a flag, you have to open the door for everyone.
That's only if they petition for the village to fly it, not if they just on their own float in the parade.
That's exactly what I'm saying. I agree with that wholeheartedly. If someone is walking down the side of the street with a flag
Or
in a
even on their own
parade,
float.
freedom of speech, no problem. If it's a golf banner sponsored parade and somebody puts up a flag, I think we could potentially have an issue there. On a
Someone
float,
from-
for example.
Some from the village. On the
Someone,
village float.
well, yes.
Not if someone's just walking in the
No,
parade. we can't-
Absolutely, absolutely very narrow. Gotta be on a village float or a float running the village parade. Which,
Right,
again,
and
because there's the control aspect of it. We can control that. Certainly can't control who's gonna be walking down the street with a flag.
Right.
And we shouldn't. We shouldn't.
Well, and this issue came up when we were talking about sports flags, if I'm correct. We were talking about somebody having a Xavier flag, or we're gonna have, somebody wants to put a Xavier flag, but what you're saying is it's only on a village float in the village parade.
Right.
Which
I would
not be the,
I would expand it actually to virtually any float, because I'm presuming there's control over every float. In other words, somebody can't just all of a sudden pull up with a float and decide to drive it down the street.
I don't know that that's true, I think it is, you just, right? Like,
Really?
I don't believe we
So-
registered for the parade. We
Right,
just showed up.
So the
Yeah.
demonstration of what we do for Fourth of July is we have the service organizations line up on two separate streets, and then anybody who wants to ride a bike, march in the parade, and whatever, they line up on another street separately. We've never policed that,
Yeah,
ever.
right.
So that does add the question, if a group that the village does not want
Yeah.
to associate with, pick one, do we have the ability, or should there be the ability to say, that's not a part of the village? I think there's a slippery slope there.
Slippery with what?
But we
Well-
don't, right now, with the lack of a registration process, we are avoiding this issue, correct, or not?
I'm sorry.
Are we avoiding this issue because there is no screening tool right now to
Yeah.
say who can?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I'm a little, this is, then again, it's calling it a slippery slope and saying that this is dangerous when you get into that area is factual. If you have a parade and you don't control who marches in the Golf Manor 4th of July parade, and then someone shows up, and I'll just say it, with the KKK flag on the back of their bike, rides down the street, are other entities gonna say, hey, well, actually, that's not a good example. Somebody shows up with a flag for a union, okay? That's probably a better example, and rides down the street with it. Are we allowing that? Are we allowing that to happen because we don't vet these groups that march or walk in the parade? And is someone, and again, it's gonna happen. Someone's gonna say, hey, look, you're not vetting these people, therefore I can show up and I can put whatever flag up I want to and ride in your parade.
What's the legal distinction between someone from a union showing up and carrying a flag and someone from a union showing up and wearing their union jacket?
And marching in the parade.
Yeah.
Actually, there's a big distinction because the law is really just related to flags. What we're talking about, it's just related to flags.
Well, I'm saying in the current,
I know what you're saying. I'm just telling you there's nothing that regulates what people wear.
Yeah.
This
Right, and
this
by
areas of law and the ordinance we're addressing strictly addresses flags. So I guess my advice to you would be to vet people who want to ride in the parade or have a float with regard to the flag that they carry. And if you, or not allow, just basically not allow them at all, unless council says it's okay.
my concern is where does that where does that stop? Because it's, okay, you can't have your union flag. Okay, I sewed onto my jacket. Now it's a jacket. Now we're regulating your jackets. Okay, so you
No,
can't.
like I said, this is
Well,
not,
I'm not saying that this would, I'm saying there's just, if the goal is to try to prevent someone from doing something, carrying an offensive flag down, then just change it from not a flag to a banner, or
Right.
change it to a poster, or change it to something you sew on your jacket. When we start getting into the realm of us saying what you can and can't speak on is, I think is a dangerous place to go.
well, let's back up to the fundamental issue here. Fundamental issue is what flags does the village want to allow to be flown? Okay, let's just start with that. Starting with that, again, the law is pretty clear that if you simply allow anyone to fly a flag upon application, that anyone can fly a flag, and you have to let them fly a flag, okay? And that's all it addresses.
From my viewpoint, I don't think, I think we should just avoid the whole issue and just only fly the US state and city flags.
Well, again, and that's a choice that a lot of communities make, because it's definitely the path of least resistance and less risk.
And not just that, I think, right now in our community, not to say Gulf Maine, but in the greater Cincinnati community, greater state, country, there's a lot of division already. There's a lot of issues with people conflicting ideas, disagreeing in sometimes great ways, some ways in not so great ways. And I just feel like putting something like this in place might just create another forum for further disagreement, further division, further reasons to fight over something that I'm not necessarily seeing the equal or greater upside.
So my question is, this is referring to flags flown on poles owned by the village.
Correct.
Why does that influence at all parades?
I think because in my mind, the principle is the same. The case law, it's very
Like, why
excellent.
would this change how we operate the 4th of July parade? I guess is what I'm getting at.
Let me give you a little background. The case law talks about governmental speech and individual speech. Okay? Governmental speech is allowed. The village of Gulf Manor can express its opinion through this body, basically, through the council. And if the village of Gulf Manor wishes to fly a flag, any flag, they can do that. Now, read the resolution, it has to be, a council member has to bring it to council, council has to vote for it, and then it gets to run. That's governmental speech. We can express an opinion. Okay? When it becomes individual speech, which is where, again, the case law came from, which is where communities were essentially allowing anybody to fly a flag. And what happened was there was a community, I can't remember, starts with an L. But anyway, this community was doing that. Fly a flag, everybody was fine with it. Then all of a sudden a Christian organization decided they wanted to fly a flag. Council said, we don't want to do that, or because we want to maintain the separation of church and state, which is a pretty valid concern. In fact, our resolution talks about that we're not going to allow that to happen. Well, the Christian organization sued and said, wait a minute, you're allowing everybody else to fly flags. You can't deny us the right to fly a flag because it becomes individual speech. It's the distinction the court has made. You can see where that would expand to, again, some not so savory organizations deciding, we want to fly a flag, you're allowing everybody else, so you have to let us too. So you have to put restrictions on the flying of flags if you want to maintain that kind of the ability to control who flies flags on your flag. That was the whole concept.
So I think if we go back to why this originally was a request or a subject of conversation, it was to promote more belonging in the community and inclusion, right? So that we could post we could fly flags at the government building that represented the different communities in the village, right? So specifically, we had talked about the Trans Day of Disability and whether we could fly a flag, same for Pride Month or any of the other nationally recognized days or holidays that we wanted to represent that also reflects our community. So I hear you on the risk, but I think I would like to flip the conversation a little bit to not just talk about the risk side of things and why we wanted to do this and what benefit there is, to your point, Zach, of doing this. Because I think there is an argument for, division, and we've talked about that, but like, what is the benefit and why did we want to do this in the first place? I think is an important piece of the conversation. My other question is, couldn't we just limit it to things that are nationally recognized?
Right.
Like Trans Day of Visibility is nationally recognized from the White House. All the different holidays that we've talked about, or, the days, Holocaust Remembrance Day, whatever it might be, that we would have the ability to recognize our community through a commemorative flag on the flagpole. That's what we're really talking about. That's what the nugget of why we wanted to do this. So if you limit it, you already said no church and state.
Yeah.
But if you limited it to national recognized holidays or days, that feels like it removes the risk. Okay, Xavier, I'm sorry, you're not nationally recognized, I can't put your flag out there. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do.
Narrow
I
the
do.
scope.
And it's the way it's written right now, it's really focused on commemoration being the purpose, not celebrating a sports team win
No.
or something like that.
Right,
So I think
I-
that that's important to note too. And I also, so like between the fact that we're emphasizing that it's commemorative, that the request has to be made by a member of the village council. And I like Brittany's idea of making it a nationally recognized day anyway. I think between those three things, it really helps narrow what we're trying to do and the purpose behind this.
I'm comfortable with the way it's written. And there's a certain amount of risk in this, no question about it. It's the risk tolerance that, the village council wants to take. But I'm comfortable with the way it's written. I again, kind of modeled it off the case law to make sure that, to the extent that I can, unfortunately, in America, we always know that anybody can sue anybody, and we want to limit the challenge, limit the risk. I get what you're saying. I need to think that one through. I almost feel like that might. I guess the limit on it is up to you ultimately. If council wants to limit it to that type of thing, that's fine. Again, I feel like the way it's written will work.
I
Because
agree,
if
but
you-
I'm going more to Zach's point and is this a way to sort of mediate those
Well,
sort of issues?
I
I
feel-
also don't want to
Could
put
you
more
do me,
restrictions.
could you do me a favor? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. But could you give me an example of what you're thinking that it would be limited to?
Well, so I guess I am suggesting we narrow the scope and limit it to commemorative flags on the flagpole that also have a national holiday or national day of something tied to it. And that alleviates this need to further restrict our parade registration. Right now, we've never had anybody have to register. I don't want to change that. I don't want to put more barriers to participation. So my suggestion is if we just limit the scope of what we're talking about with the flags that we fly at the building, we don't have to address any of this issue with the park, or I'm sorry, with the parade, because it's moot. We're talking specifically about the flags on the flagpole outside of our building. We're avoiding registration we're not messing with something that's already working.
I mean, that's not even my whole concern. If we're talking about inclusivity, which is, what our aim is to be an inclusive community, inevitably when you recognize this group or that group, and it's not that we're recognizing all groups, we're only recognizing groups that council votes on and then approves by majority vote, seemingly with this ordinance as written. And that's still exclusionary to a certain level. If we want to be inclusive, there's really three flags that are inclusive of every single one of us here. the US flag, the state flag, and the Gulf Manor Village flag. Those represent all of us. And I don't think it's something we want to open up ourselves to optically, legally, in numerous other ways of still at some certain level, picking and choosing certain groups over other groups. I just don't think that's what we need to be doing. I think, we should be focusing on meeting, the physical health, safety needs of our residents here, and the village is kind of at some level deciding what groups to recognize and what groups not to recognize. It's just something we don't need to distract ourselves with. There's greater work that can be done besides, picking and choosing flags.
I hear you. I also just disagree. I think, if you're talking about what represents all of us holistically, yes, but I think there are different identities that should be honored and recognized to create a further environment of belonging.
And why not others?
inclusion.
Why not others?
What do you mean others?
Well,
Others by like political?
Some identities are other identities. At some level,
No, if you let me finish, what I'm saying is, yes, this is not gonna root out bias, because, you're still gonna the request has to either come from community members to council members, or council members bringing it to the rest of the council. I can't eliminate all the bias, but we can try to do our best to make sure that we have a diverse population that is representative of our community. That's the whole point of this, right? Like, I would love to flip council even further, because we don't have council that represents our actual community. If you look at the demographics, it's not reflective. But that's the best way to root out what you're talking about.
I think the best way is to not delve into the issue altogether.
Well,
That actually removes all the bias.
it doesn't, it doesn't. That still is for a hetero, cis, white male population. That's who that fits.
No, it doesn't. It represents every single person here.
I don't agree with that, and that's fine. We don't have to agree. But I think what we should focus on is how the rest of the committee is feeling around this ordinance or resolution, and whether we want to articulate any changes before it moves to council, or if we're saying we do not want this to move to council.
So can I ask a clarification on two things?
Sure.
One would be, in this policy, I think we have delineated that the big pole, the main pole, is only going to have the state, the national, or the village flag on it.
I think I'm not sure it's in the policy, but I believe that is the way it works. I mean, we're talking about the other, I didn't really see it necessary to say that we're not gonna fly the American flag, the Ohio flag, and the Gulf Manor flag on that pole.
Well, I'm thinking about this operationally, so that's what's happening with the two big poles, and I would see that this pole out front as being one of those, and the one in the park, Memorial
Yes.
Park.
Yes, those are the flags. Those are
So the
poles.
sub poles, if you want to call them that, would be the two on either side of the door, which is where other flags would be flown.
Right. That's where it started, and then somebody pointed out, I forget who, I think it was Sharon, pointed out the pole down at the park. So we can't just address those two poles. We have to, and then to make sure this thing grows, breathes, just in case you get other flag poles, I just changed it to any poles that are controlled or maintained by the village.
So then, I'm sorry, the mayor is,
It's shared.
so the second question is, what happens in a situation where someone from a Catholic school who lives in the village on Easter wants us to recognize Easter with a flag on the building? How do we handle that?
That would be
Just
up to
as- This is a
council to
religious,
decide. Yeah, it would, to me, that's a clear distinction between church and state, but that would be a question for council to decide. I can't answer that.
I'm not sure it would be. I think it's excluded.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah,
it's,
it would be excluded.
Or even if you want, you could take it, what if instead of maybe a Easter flag or Christian flag, on Easter, they want to fly the Nativity's flag?
No.
Why?
Because that's a Catholic institution.
It's
That's
a
separation of
school.
church and state.
yeah, well,
It's a school. It probably receives public funds.
I think
Um,
this is the nuance of debate that the council can have. I don't know that we're gonna root out every single scenario.
I mean, I really just like the idea of tying it to a nationally recognized holiday, and that
I
we're
agree.
not picking it.
I agree.
It's
I think
picked.
Easter
Well-
is nationally recognized.
Well,
It's a federal holiday.
I mean, I could certainly clean up the language with regard to religion. That wouldn't be a problem. And I think that's important, that, because again, this whole controversy started because of a religion that wanted to run a flag. And so I think, and the obvious issue of separation of church and state. So we could clear that language up to clarify that, to address your concern. I'm still, I think that's doable if that's what council wants to do, to tie it into a nationally recognized day or event. I mean, this is a tough issue because I understand the concern about whenever you run a flag, there's an exclusion. It just is what it is, so.
David, do you have thoughts? You're being a little quiet.
I have a lot of thoughts, but I do put them into words yet. So.
Okay, just wanna make sure we're all hearing your voice. All right, so where,
Mayor, I think it has
Oh.
some.
yes,
I like the idea of the, what I heard you suggesting about the national, I guess, to be nationally recognized. I'm thinking that could get tricky too in terms of what the definition of nationally recognized is, because sometimes like the White House will recognize something and then there's a change in who the president is, and they're not recognizing those things, so does that then change? I like the idea that we have separate posts that council just decides what can be on there. We don't have any limits on it. Council decides what can be on there. It can be Pride Month. It can be nativity. It can be whatever. I guess you have the debate about the religion piece in it, but council decides on that.
Well,
The issue that-
if it's, I mean, I think that needs to be very clear.
all right, well,
And that's
council
on
with
me.
legal-
That's
council
on
with
me.
legal
let's not interrupt
consequences.
people.
Sorry.
Thank you. Then the issue about the Veterans Park thing that Sharon and I both brought up was that there was this idea of having the different divisions of the military there as well, perhaps on a separate flag. And the question was, are we talking about having the commemorative flags over there as well? And so we were saying there needs to be a decision about, are the commemorative flags just here on the municipal building on those posts? Then the additional issue came up around, well, what about parades and all this stuff? Do we want to extend what the existing thing is, the existing draft, to cover parades? And it sounds like you guys are saying, no, at this time, we don't want to mess with extending that, which is dealing with flag posts. But for clarity, because I don't have the piece to fit the draft in front of me right now, so I don't know what edits were made to it since the time that I submitted it. I had requested that there wasn't a statement about the separate flag posts in there, so I'm unclear on whether those separate flag posts, the ones that are on the door, whether those are in the current legislation.
The only change I made was to eliminate the reference to those two and open it up to any flagpoles maintained, controlled, et cetera, by the village.
So I was thinking that there was a compromise that has then been undone by that, which was we have the main pole that has the national, state, in the city or municipality flag, and then we have our commemorative poles that council can decide what they want to put on there. But that was removed from the draft.
How do we include members of our community if this were to go forward with the proposed changes of US recognized, whatever definition that is, of groups in our community who don't have a recognized day or who don't have a recognized month? By default, we'd be excluding them. So even with our supposed fix, we already are, by default, excluding more of our community instead of bringing everyone together. I just don't think, no matter how you try to legislate it, inevitably we're leaving people out. People are gonna end up feeling sour They're gonna end up feeling sore. And I just think we have bigger issues to tackle than flying flags and dividing our community even. And that's something we don't want. We as council, not me on council, but the village council, in ordinances or charter somewhere, it says we don't run political campaigns for committee or for council. We just run for council. I think that's a great thing. We're a small village. We don't need to be dividing ourselves up by political party or any other group. We're one group together. And no matter how we change it, we're leaving people out. And I don't think, and Brittany, even you said yourself, you want to change council up. You want to make it more reflective of our village demographics. So even now, according to you, we don't have a council that would be adequate to speak for everyone, seemingly. So again, I just think we can sidestep the whole issue and bring everyone together by flying the 3 flags that represent every person here, whether you agree with that concept or not. That's what they do. And yeah, I feel like we're just causing ourselves, stub toes somewhere down the road.
Any other comments before we see if there's a motion to move forward or table this?
You have anything to say? You as a resident?
I mean, as a resident, I'm one of those underserved populations that would be reflected in this, or underrepresented, I guess I should say. But I also know that in the overall process that we have talked about this going through the Human Rights Commission as being something that they go through and designate and debate, and that's separate from council, and that they then make recommendations to council. And then the rest I'll debate in council.
All right. Does anybody want to make a motion before we move to the next subject?
I would like some more time to delve into this.
Yeah, I don't think we're ready.
I don't know, I would like to look into this more.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
I would like to look into this more and delve into it more.
Rob, can you also pull the city of Cincinnati's legislation around this? Or
Sure.
talk to the city manager over there?
Yeah.
That would be super helpful. I think having a nearby municipality that we could look at. And also, are they currently having issues with, the negative side of this, as you said? That would be helpful. I'll add this back to our agenda for next meeting in June.
And let me state just, I guess, for the record, whatever, that I do want this, but I think it's also more important that we all want this. I guess it's just kind of where I stand. So I just don't think we're ready yet.
I second Melody's thought.
Yeah.
Great. Don't want to shut down the conversation. I just also want us to get.
Yeah, we could move through, but I just
Yep.
want to say it like that. Like, it's not that I don't want it. I just think it's important that we all come to some sort of agreement before we push it through.
Okay.
I think Zach opened a whole different side in my brain that I wasn't focused on that, so it's something that.
Okay, yeah. That's great. All right, we will talk more about it next time. Why don't we talk about the ordinance 2024-2, and then we will close with the out-of-date ordinances, and do we want to take that on as executive committee? The second bullet point there.
Which one?
So we are gonna look at ordinance 2024-2, which is replacing the pages. This is what came up at council meeting last month. It is an update to the, per the Ohio Revised Code, I believe, to our own ordinances. If you remember, there's a fun one in there about not coloring bunnies, as well as a unique spelling of marijuana.
Like dying rabbits?
Not even
Dying
that.
rabbits,
Coloring.
coloring
Yeah.
rabbits and baby poultry. Don't know who's doing that, but they should stop.
I've never heard of this before.
Please stop dying poultry and baby rabbits. I'm gonna get hate mail. So I don't know if there's any questions here. Again, we're looking at this because we're trying to create a process that before things become a legislative memo for full council, a committee has eyes on them and can vet it, ask questions before it's moved over to full council. Rob, anything to add?
No, I mean, this is something that we do every year. Our publishing company takes the ordinances that you pass during the year, reduces them to puts them in the actual ordinance books, renumbers them, and makes them part of our code, as opposed to just freestanding ordinances, which you'll never find. Additionally, when the state law changes, they update our ordinances as well. There are certain things that we are not allowed to touch. Well, actually, we're home rule, so we can, oh, there you go. So this is it. So this contains our ordinances, it contains our charter, it contains Ohio law. And again, there are certain things we cannot touch. In other words, we cannot make something legal in the village of Gulf Manor that is illegal throughout the state of Ohio. We can, however, increase penalties for things that are illegal across the state of Ohio. But we can't make them legal, and we can't reduce the penalty. For example, we could make a DUI something less than the state of Ohio has already done. So this ordinance, which by the way is by and large, I modified somewhat, but by and large it's given to me by our company, although they didn't this year, I had to seek it out. They give it to us. They have all the pages there. There is a set of pages that I've given to Ron. I delivered it. I have to deliver to the law library downtown because they have the same book, and by statute we have to have a copy of it on file there, and then my own copy of it gets updated as well. So this occurs every year, and again, they're adopting our local ordinances, such as the buddy ordinance, as well as they're adopting they're changing and modifying the state, or they're putting the state ordinance changes in our book.
To be clear, and
Yes.
to make a joke, the bunny ordinance is a local one, as in local to Gulf Manor.
Yeah, but
It's dying bunnies.
well, actually, you'll find that in virtually every community. You really will. It was a thing, apparently. I don't know
Alright, I'm
who
gonna
would
move on
be.
from that.
Yeah, I think we should. So anyway,
Further research.
Yeah.
I don't know.
yeah,
All right, get into
that'd
the,
be fun.
Crazy people do crazy things, spray painting like rabbits, what in the world?
Well, they do it at Easter time because they think it's cute.
But
It's
that's
sick,
what
but they think it's cute.
making it pink. Gotta be careful.
Usually like purple, Pastel colors, they do all sorts of
all
colors.
right, do we have a motion to approve this and send it to full council? I think that's what we need to do.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve it. Like, basically, to be clear, all these traffic codes, these are the ones that we're talking about updating, right?
Yes,
And the general things.
Okay.
yes.
I hope I'm not expected to have read all of this stuff, like each one of these individual ones.
I
Okay.
honestly, I looked through it,
Okay,
for various reasons.
okay.
But I wouldn't, you're welcome to read it all.
No,
but,
okay,
yeah.
before I push this motion, I want to make sure that's not
Yeah.
part of the responsibility of doing that. Okay, yeah,
Just as a side note, this reflects what's online also.
okay,
So online has been updated.
Yeah.
And our police officers will refer to this on a regular basis as they
Okay.
do their daily job.
okay. Yeah, let's keep it up to date.
Okay, so we have a motion, do we have a second?
Yes.
Great, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye,
Aye.
great. All right,
We did a thing.
yay, we did something. All right, last on the agenda before we close is a question/request. We've talked about in council meetings, sometimes our ordinances, our charter, who knows what else are not, they conflict with each other and they also just need to be reviewed. There's been examples about referencing a rec commission director that we no longer have and referencing our rec center, which is not a thing anymore. So there's been a request to do some updates to that. And there was a suggestion on whether or not executive wanted to take that on and parse it out, because it is a very large job to start going through all of that versus paying Rob or somebody else to do it, I believe. No comments. I know David wants to do it.
I'm not looking for more work.
Right.
For free work.
David said he'll take sections 100 through 500.
And have it done by next week.
Obviously. I don't think anybody's looking forward to this,
No.
but it also frustrates all of us when we can't get straight answers.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Right, so just what I would say is that when something comes
That,
up
that's exactly
in
what I was
council where there is a conflict, or we're trying to discuss something or figure something out, where it does go back to a conflict, then it should come back and we should look over that one.
Yes.
Not go through the whole thing,
Yeah.
that is gonna just be, when we have something on the table, we'll throw it back down, we'll look at it and try to figure that. That's what I would say, is something that makes sense. And if we see it's too much fuss, we'll throw it on there.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I was gonna suggest something similar. I'm comfortable with that.
Are there certain areas where there's more conflict than others that we could start with? Or do we have like some documented, it sounds like we have documented conflicts to analyze first.
I wouldn't say documented necessarily, not in any sort of official way. We've had conversations, Charlotte may have something documented, but we've had conversations where there has been disagreement and asked questions in council. I think we can do a better process of documenting those when those come up in council meetings. And not just say, well, that's a good question, that's not clear, we should probably write that down so that we can actually clean that up a bit. I would say that the rec center, anything around recreation, we know that there is some confusion or lack of clarity in that. Any other?
I think that might be a good place to start.
Can I offer another example?
Sure.
So like with the planning commission and the zoning commission, there is very conflicting information based on where you look on the term limits and term lengths, and how it has been applied. So it might be similar to what happened with the recreation commission of like minutes were lost or whatever happened there, but even within the same ordinance, if you look in one section, it'll say a term length of 6 years. You go like 2 sections down and it'll say 5 years. But then when we put it in action a couple years ago, we appointed somebody with a 2-year term, and then we had a 1-year term somewhere else. And the whole reason, like with the rec commission or with the human rights commission, they're supposed to be at first, a 1-year, a 2-year, a 3-year, and then they renew for a set number of years so that then they are always staggered. And like with the planning commission, we had where 2 people rolled off at the same time, and that shouldn't have been the case. And so the math isn't mathing, and and even when I go to the ordinance, like the ordinance math isn't mathing either. So that's where it's with Rob right now to look into for us.
Those specifically term limits?
You
what I
know what
understood?
it is. Mhm.
Those specifically term limits you're referring to?
Not term limits, term lengths.
Term length.
Did you want me to look into that?
Yes.
I mean, I'm just waiting for some direction. I'll do it.
No, you have an email, and it was the email that you responded to me on Friday that I thought we were talking about.
Oh, okay. Got it. Sorry.
Put it on your to-dos, please.
Got it.
Now we throw it back at
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so does anybody else have a different opinion other than address it as it comes up? Would anybody really like to read all of this and go through it with a fine tooth comb? Or the alternative is, can we do a subcommittee to look at, or not a subcommittee, a group, working group that wants to tackle recreation or planning? Because we know there is confliction there. And then others we address as they come.
There is some history for that. I mean, when you change the charter, you appoint a charter commission. That's a big job. You have to do that. And the conflicts run, and sometimes they're just subtle, but there's inconsistencies and ambiguities that do run throughout the charter, code, etc. It's a big job to go through it all.
And I think right
Probably
now,
worthwhile.
what we're talking about is at least identifying the areas. Because doing a charter amendment, cleaning up the charter is a large deal, it has to require votes, I don't think we're talking about that at this moment. Right now, we're talking about documenting.
No, I understand what you're saying. I'm just saying there are things in the charter that conflict with the code.
I agree.
So you're gonna have to kind of address it all.
Yep.
The problem, of course, with the charter is it's not as simple as passing an ordinance or a resolution. You've got to actually submit it to the voters.
I think that it is important work to investigate and that there are certain inconsistencies, it already sounds like, that are kind of impeding process or general operation. So I think that there should be a group that looks into it. I'm happy to be a part of that group. Then I think once we tackle what we know about, then, we can delve into other areas where we suspect that there might be other inconsistencies, document them, and then prioritize them accordingly.
Did we just hear volunteer for section 1 through 500?
I heard a
Never.
second volunteer.
Never
Yeah,
the
section
timeline when I would be done with sections 1 through 500.
Yeah. I think that's great, I appreciate that, Katie. I think I would love to have somebody else to support that, so you're not alone there. Would anybody else have the capacity to support?
I think you do, no?
Fire. I'll be there.
I heard you. Anyone else?
I can't do it now. I'm not gonna overcommit.
You? No. Okay.
From a community engagement standpoint, if we wanted to solicit volunteers who might have experience in this is something that we could perhaps post.
Okay, this is great. Katie and I will tackle this, and we will remind you that you all said no every time.
Yeah, actually after Juneteenth of next year.
Thank you for that.
No, but we'll
No,
see. I can't do it now.
Okay, I hear you. All right, we will work on that, and give you all an update when we have it.
We could tackle each one as it comes and then bring it forward.
Right. We'll do
Meaning
that.
each one that you find and you see, you bring it forward. And then we could,
Yeah, or maybe get you like 5.
Yeah.
Like that,
1 through 500.
Regret my own jokes. All right, that's all I've got. Anything else before we go to adjourn?
Yeah, one thing. Since I saw today before we started that I will be missing our next committee meeting.
Yep.
I'd like to make a motion that we could postpone the continued debate and discussion about the flag ordinance until at least the July meeting.
Yeah, that's fair. We are gonna actually focus next month on the review, finalizing that. So we can push the continued conversation around the flag to, you got a review to do, to July.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Yep. Thank you for. Okay.
Yeah, but we want you here for the review. You're gonna be back a different day, should we change?
I could call in, I don't know if that's allowed or not, but my flight gets back that Monday night at like midnight.
You can't do business, I think, but you can listen in, I believe, by telephone. You can't vote.
Actually,
No.
COVID and everything, who knows?
I
recently,
did that.
yeah, he can vote as long as the committee's good with it. You can vote, you
Oh.
can participate. Yep.
Can I do that?
Well, yes, you could.
Show up. It's gonna be one phone here.
All right, yeah, if you want to participate by, that would be great.
All right.
Okay, if that doesn't work out, let us know, we'll try to move the date.
I'll
So we
figure
just
out
have everybody here.
who I want them to.
Yeah, but you're not flying that night?
No, that's it.
My flight leaves at like 8 p.m.
You're optimistic we're gonna be done. No.
8 p.m. Arizona time.
Right, so.
I know.
So that's really like
10 p.m.
10
I'm
p.m.
joking. All right, so next executive committee is scheduled Monday, June 3rd at 6 p.m. Zach will call in, everybody else should be here. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Ms. Kramer, can I ask a question real quick? On the community engagement meetings, since that is supposed to be this week, is there a time change on that or a date change at this point?
To me,
You know, we had talked about that last
yes,
week.
we are, it's going to be at 5 PM on Thursday,
Okay,
just
can
moving
we
up an hour.
put that in the record for this meeting?
Sure.
And I'll change that on the website.
Eric, did you catch that, announcement?
That was Thursday at 5 PM.
Yep, moving community engagement to 5 PM from 6.
Thank you.
Rennie, one more. In the past, council over June, July, and August met once a month instead of twice. And we did all 3 meetings in one shot.
Okay.
We just sat here for a little longer, got it knocked out because people were on vacations and just worked out better that way.
Mhm.
The question will be is if we should ask council to switch that again for the summer
Summer.
break to have all meetings in one day. This way we could accommodate more people when they go on
Mhm.
vacations.
That sounds like a lovely proposal for you to bring to council.
It's in section 505.
You punted that to me, so now you get that one. All right, motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
Great, all in favor?
Aye.
Great. Thank you all.